Good morning, everybody. Welcome to what is a Wednesday preview, midweek preview for jumps racing at Stratford. I fully realise now that most people's attention has been turned to Yark for the rest of the week. And obviously I'm going to be sort of looking at that as the week goes by, but there's some jump racing coming up. We've got Stratford today, we've got Cartmel, we've got Utoxeter as well. He says taking a swig of his tea, and it's all worth a look because today's going to be interesting, I think, not least because the ground conditions are going to change this morning. They're already calling it it's on the soft side of good already at Stratford. And the rain is just hitting now, according to the rain radar. It started about 15 minutes ago, and it's due to stick for a good 90 minutes, if not a bit more. It's not masses of rain, it's in the 2 to 4 mil band. So you can assume that they're going to get somewhere around 6 to 8 mil over the next couple of hours. And that's going to turn it soft. It'll turn it genuinely soft. So with that in mind, I thought I'd take a look at the Stratford card and see if there was anything that was either worthwhile betting or perhaps in a couple of cases laying. We start with the 135 novice hurdle 2 mile, where Courtney Bold has been put in at 1 to 2 after 2 easy wins at Stratford. The questions for Courtney Bold today to answer are: is he going to be as effective on slower ground? And he's got a double penalty to carry. I think he'll probably do it. The main reason being, I think his main competitors are going to find conditions against them as well. I think Grey Spirit definitely needs good ground, and he's been disappointing anyway so far. He's looking to me now like a bit of a handicap project possibly. And the tongue tie's gone on first time with him. Crimson King will stay, but I'm not convinced as to the merit of that third behind Enemy Coast ahead at Utoxeter. And I think he'll want better ground. If there is an each way bet in the race, if you're desperate for a quid each way on something, you could probably do worse than have a pound each way on Out I Said of Henry Oliver's. This will be second run for Henry. It's interesting in so much he was only made a 9 to 1 chance to beat Courtney Bold here last time. There was a little bit of money for him. There was a bit of money floating around for him that day. As if he was, I think wanted to expect him to run a better race, clearly. He ran pretty awful in the end, to be perfectly honest. He got beaten absolute wickets. But he's got a couple of bits of his point-to-point form looks awful as well. Fell, pulled up, fell. I mean, he don't look great. But he was still in with a chance at the last when he came down at Dungarvan. And again, it's only moderate form. I'm not going overboard about it. It's just moderate form. But nevertheless, the fact that he was still in with a chance of winning a point-to-point on what was yielding to soft ground at the last gives him place chances here if they've sorted him out from whatever the problem was from his first run of the season. Maybe he just needed that because he hadn't run since January. So maybe he can hit the frame, Out I Said, and if the favourite fails to fire, then you never know, something might happen. But I think he'd be the only one I'd want to bet each way, I think, in that 135. 205 is just shy. I say just shy. There's additional distances again here because of rail movements. The first race, there's 135 yards to. There's another 45 yards added onto this 2 mile, 3.5 furlong. So it's not going to make a massive difference, but a bit later on the card, there's a couple of races that it will make a difference to. So this is class 5, 2.5 mile novices handicap hurdle. I'd like to see Marmont run a better race. He's down to a mark of 105 now, which is he's well treated on the best of his form over hurdles. He won off 109 March 2019. And I follow Jo Davies on Twitter, and I know she was saying how many breathing issues the horse had, and that they managed to get them all sorted out. And he was just a little bit out of his depth, basically, in market race. And he wasn't running a bad race, to be honest. He was still in touch when he fell 3 out, although he was starting to come under the pump a bit. This is easier. Ground will be fine for him. And he does just about get the trip. So I think he's moderately interesting. Certainly more so than a few of these. Phoebus Lasky Bar, Robin Dickin. It must be a year now since Robin Dickin's had a winner. Dr. Hayes has been a little bit disappointing so far. In his one chase start, he pulled up after making numerous mistakes. He never went a yard. Going Mobile was a blindingly obvious favourite on his third to Tim Rocco. If you fancied that, I couldn't put you off because he won't mind the ground either. He's by, I think, the most likely winner, but the prices, it tells you that as well. I don't think I'm telling you then something that I'm not already telling you. And the only other one that was sort of moderately interesting really was Global Anchor, but he's drifted in price. He will make a better chaser, I think, than Hurdley. Had a wind up, coming back off a break. He's well fancied a couple of times for similar sort of contests to this over hurdles. I can see him improving for the switch to fences, but drifty this morning, and maybe that's because he's going to be in need of the run. So I think Going Mobile the most likely winner, but I want to see I'd like to see a better effort from Marmont with a view to the future, I think. 2:35, 2 mile handicap hurdle, not a bad race actually, and a good pace as well. There's a few of these you can point a stick at and say, well, that'll go from the front. So it should be run at a decent pace. The two interesting ones for me, and again, I don't know whether it's today or not, although I think there might have been a bit of money for both of them looking at it. Rajash was the first one that was interesting. In fact, I'm sure that was a lot bigger yesterday, Rajash. He's trained by Declan Carroll, who hasn't had a chumps winner for God knows how long. But there was definite promise in a couple of his runs over in maiden hurdles last year. And he's particularly well handicapped with Raw on their effort at Huntingdon, where Raw finished 4th, Rajas finished 6th, and he was only 4 lengths behind him. And they were off levels that day. Well, Rajas is off 10 stone 4 here, and Raw is off 11 stone 10. So you don't need me to tell you that he's very well in here on that piece of form. Whether he wants soft ground would be my question. He'll get away with it, but whether he'll stay and get away with it is a different matter. If you sort of say what I'm saying, I think if he's going to get 2 mile, he'll probably want 2 mile on slightly better ground. But he's interesting, and so too Memphis Bleak, who I've mentioned before. I've put him up on Daily Punts as one that you need to be following, I think, this season in sort of low grade handicap hurdles. Again, a deal of promise in 3 starts at Ludlow in maiden hurdles last year. On more than one occasion showed more enough to win a race, certainly of this nature. And at Stratford, first time out, he went off a 20 to 1 chance behind For Pleasure, never got in the race, and just basically stayed on from the back to pass a few beaten ones. That was over 2, as I say. 2, he's going to get a good pace here. Ideally, I'd want him up a little bit more in trip, but he is interesting. And he will win races. 3:05 was a race I wasn't mad keen on. There's only 4 left now. Well, there's only 4 left. The one that I thought might be the danger's out. But they put Ashator in as favourite. He's 4-6 actually. I'm looking at that and thinking I might want to play now actually, because I don't think Ashator should be that price on what we saw at Newton Abbot. I don't know. Fangio was the one that was moderately interesting to me, who will go on the ground. He really does want some rain to come. He won a novice handicap chase here in March when he made every yard of the running. Never looked like really being caught. That was off a mark of 118. It's 125 today. He's had a run to blow the cobwebs away in a much better race than this last month. He was basically a little bit out of his depth there. He only went off 100 to 30. I mean, he only went off 100 to 30 to win that, and that was a Class 2 race. And this is he's a bigger price here to win a weaker race after just one attempt, as it were. So he's had a wind up since his last run as well. I think he's moderately interesting now at Falls. I could be tempted. I could be lured in here. Atlantic Storm loves it at Stratford. This is his track. And he won't mind the ground either, but Mark 125 is going to be Mark 112 rather is going to be asking a bit more from him, and I'm not entirely convinced he really wants soft ground either. So there are question marks for Atlantic Storm. Yeah, Fangio, I'm going to put him up as a win bet. I think he's got a good chance of beating Ashator here if you can get him off the bridle. Now then, the 3:35, fun and games here, boys and girls. 3 miles, 2.5 furlongs. And on top of that, you've got your rail movements. This is not a million miles off 3 miles 4 furlongs for a handicap hurdle by the time you're done. So you want something here, bearing in mind the ground, that will stay and stay. And I basically got this down to 3, and one of them's a non-runner now, Tea Time Fred. I think the two that are interesting are Fort Gabriel. I think Fort Gabriel's very interesting, actually, and Jasmine Day Board. The case for Jasmine Day Board is simple enough. He stays perfectly well, and he'll handle the ground, and he comes here off the back of a better effort at Newton Abbott. That was over 3, 2.5. He's on a mark that he can do some damage off. Davy Pipe's runners, bit in and out. He had 3 yesterday that ran moderately, but he did have a couple of winners at the weekend. But Fort Gabriel, who hasn't been seen for 163 days, well, that's no bother at all, because he won in January off a mark of 117, which is the same as today's mark, off basically off a year and a half off, about 500 days off. So and in fact his general record fresh is very good. As I say, his mark's fine. He won't mind the ground. He stays and stays. And interestingly, this is Poppy Bridgewater's first ride. Now, I wonder whether her dad is basically trying to put her up on a win, her first time up, to get her profile raised, as it were, get her noticed. I thought that was quite interesting. She takes 3 off as well. There's going to be some lead in the saddle because he's carrying 11.9, and I am guessing that Poppy's riding around about 9 stone at the moment. I think the lowest weight that she's ridden off the flat, I did have a look last night, I think was 8 stone 9 in the last 12 months. So I'm presuming she's put a bit of weight on, but even so, there'll be plenty of lead in the saddle for Fort Gabriel here. But I think the fact that his record fresh is good, ground is fine, he stays well, I think it all makes him look quite interesting here at 14-1. So I'll be having a little bit on him. But it's an open looking race, in so much as plenty of these are on mark that they can win off, but it's just how many of them are going to stay. To a lesser extent includes the favourite as well here, North Star Oscar, who we've seen him win over 3-1, but I don't know, 3-4 in softer ground, don't know, maybe not, but I wouldn't want to take 9-4 about him in any case. And then we come on to some races where I've got less of an interest, because I think the market's got them about right. There's a 2 mile 2.5, and again, add your rail measurements on, it's well over 2-3, nearly 2-3.5. So for this handicap hurdle, it's the first of 2 divisions. The market has pretty much got it sewn up. No Regrets, who won head in chest at Southwell. He looked really well that day in the paddock. He absolutely hosed up the Grand Enterprise, and he turns up here under a penalty, a repeat. It is different ground, but I don't think that'll bother him. A repeat's probably good enough. And Fibonacci, I think Fibonacci probably would want it a little bit better. His improved form at Sandown last time came on much quicker ground. He was really game there, put his head down and battled on very, very well, I thought. And his mark over hurdles of 102 makes him look nicely treated on what he did there at Sandown. It's just the ground, not quite sure. He might want it a little bit quicker. Depends how much gets in. Down the bottom, I think there'll be a race somewhere this season with Rathner Ranger, who got wiped out at the first at Bangor. He fell, but it wasn't really his fault. He was badly hampered. There is a race in Rathner Ranger, but I'm not entirely sure it's this one. So I think, as I say, market's probably got that one about sewn up. Similarly, the 445, which is the second division of it, there are at least a couple more slightly more interesting ones here on the ground. Leicester Chris showed enough last season, I thought, to win a race of this nature. He's off a mark of 102 now. That looks pretty good, but he's coming back off quite a break. Not seen him since last November. I think he'll probably need the run. And Bull's Empire as well, who gave the Wolf a minor fright at Fakenham. It looked like he might throw down a challenge at one point, but the Wolf was basically in second gear at that point, and he came away. He's been given an opening mark of 96. But again, it's the same old question: does he want soft ground? It's a wait and see thing. I think I'm not mad keen to back him today, even though his price is on the drift. He's now 28 now. Guest is bigger than that kicking around as well. But there are races to be won with Bulls Empire. But as I say, another one that's coming off a long break. Jetstream as well. We ought to mention Jetstream. David Jeffries again landing another big gamble at Fontwell yesterday. I keep putting him up. I keep, we mentioned him time and again on the punt, and I think he's. I think obviously if the money comes for him, he'd have to be of interest. He's a 4-1 chance now, but that yard, they really do know the time of day, don't they? And then we've got a handicap chase to finish up with at 5:20 over 2.6.5. Again, add your distances on, you're getting on for nearly, it's certainly 2.7.5, and it'll probably feel like 3 mile by this time in this ground. So all I'm going to do here, I'm not going to try and guess the winner. I'm just going to do what I always do, I think, and lay. I'm going to be laying blue and yellow for a place. I'm hoping I can do that at under even money. There's the dead 8 at the moment, and there's a fair chance 1 or 2 of these might come out, but I've never been a fan of blue and yellow. I think his finishing effort is weak. He was second at Southwell last time. That looks a better effort on paper, but that race fell to bits. There were a couple of the fancied ones fell early in the race, and when push came to shove at the end, Kitty's Light soon had his measure anyway. He's going up in trip on softer ground. I just don't think he's particularly in love with the game. So I'm going to play Slame at, I say, hopefully something around 1.8 would be nice. And then just have the rest running for me, I think. There we go. I'll be back later on in the week then. I'll do some more of these, hopefully for Cartmel and for Utoxter. Have a good day.